Jesus, mama. She said, I am alone. Jesus. She said, I am alone. Testing mark 1 2, testing mark 1 2. Testing mark 1 2, testing mark 1 2. So we are live. So we are live. Testing mark 1 2, testing mark 1 2. Testing mark 1 2, testing mark. Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Intellectual Property and Tree Nexus podcast. Please stay posted with me until I can check up the video on Facebook and make a necessary verification. We are glad for having you with us. Those that are following now, we appreciate your support. And we want to have another outstanding episode for today. That's just it. Bear with me, guys. I'm trying to share the podcast on other platforms before going into the talk. So we can have more people following us. Sure. Trade in knowledge, the knowledge economy. Trade in This is our topic for today, trade in knowledge. We'll be discussing the knowledge economy. Looking at the innovative component and contribution to the overall economy. Trade in knowledge and the knowledge economy. So this is our topic for today. I just want to share it with other groups so we can have more people following this. Okay, so set up. Let's see if we can share. Trade in knowledge. Trade in knowledge. We want to have an understanding of what is trade in knowledge and how the knowledge economy works. So let me share with some groups here. Share with several groups. Two, three. Shared it with several other podcast. Me share it on my other page. So let's begin. Let's go into the issue of trade in knowledge. And we will firstly like to begin by asking ourselves the question, what is knowledge in terms of intellectual property? When we speak of knowledge in the context of intellectual property, what does that entail? So Basically, there's no formal definition of what uh, knowledge is in terms of intellectual property. However, the idea and concept of knowledge is to trade is the idea of trade and the transmission of knowledge. So the sharing of know-how, the sharing of how to execute tasks that requires innovative steps and basically engaging in innovations that are interrelated in a more in a more inventive way. So trade in knowledge is the idea and concept that knowledge is the trade and the transmission of knowledge. How do we trade among individuals? How do we trade among companies? And how do we trade among nations? More specifically, the issue of sharing know-how. How do we share know-how? And moreover, sharing of innovative ways to execute interrelated tasks. How do we use innovation as a means to execute tasks that are interrelated and that will require several changes over time? So this is what trade in knowledge is about. Trade in knowledge is more about an idea or concept that highlights the, the ability to trade and the transmission of how that trade will be done and the transmission of how knowledge will be utilized and shared in trade, and how to also share know-how. How can we trade through the sharing of know-how? How can we place ourselves in a position as a nation, as a company, or as an individual to use innovation to execute interrelated tasks that requires a lot of innovative steps and that may change over time from one year to another. There's always an advancement in technology. There's always advancement in innovation. So in general, this is what we refer to when we speak to trade in knowledge. And trade in knowledge is a little paradoxical because know-how or knowledge should be and can be shared. So knowledge should be shared for one individual to another. People should have the ability to share knowledge, to acquire new knowledge. However, as highlighted by Thomas Jefferson, he stated that if you light your taper at mine, I retain the light and you have the light as well. Meaning, if I had a candle in my hand and maybe you had a match and you lighted your candle and you use that same lighter to light my candle, you still retain the light on your candle as well as giving me the opportunity to have that light. So basically what that means is that this is how knowledge can be shared. Knowledge is a light that brightens an environment in the terms of having no innovative way uh, to make life much comfortable and convenient. So in this context, it's a little bit paradoxical because intellectual property in terms of trademark, copyright, patent protection highlight the issue of protecting intellectual property rights. So if I was able to invent something as an inventor, I should have the right to preserve that knowledge, to preserve that know-how exclusively for myself. And if I intend to share that knowledge, I should accumulate compensation through licensing that knowledge for other people to have access to that knowledge. They should pay for it. So I am able to give other people lessons to my invention, whether a phone or whether a laptop or whatsoever invention for that matter. So it's somehow paradoxical to say that intellectual property rights protects inventions, innovations as well, but then to also argue in the same light that knowledge must be shared. So the question then becomes, what is the yardstick of trading in something that can be shared? What is the incentive of an individual buying something that can be shared freely in terms of knowledge? So in this context is where intellectual property comes in. Intellectual property rights in terms of trade set the basis of protection, and this protection is to give exclusive right, whether be it copyright or patent right, to the person that invested the time, that knowledge to basically develop a specific invention that can be used by the general public, whether as a goods or to provide a specific service. So in order to incentivize innovation and to have more individuals engaged in innovating new devices, new items, new telephones, new radios, producing vehicles, medicines, pharmaceutical products, machines, chemicals, all those involved in the inventive process. So intellectual property creates the balance for safeguarding inventors and giving them exclusive right. And based on that protection, it then provides the incentive, because if I know eventually if I invest time and money in inventing maybe a new type of type of food or new type of medicine, I have the assurance that with intellectual property rights, when I succeed in developing that new medicine, I will get protection and intellectual based on wheresoever country I'm located in. I will receive protection. My invention will be protected. I'll have the ability to provide, give lessons out for people to sell or market my invention. And I'll have the ability to market my invention. And so that incentive is what intellectual property also highlights. So the paradox in terms of intellectual property there is that we cannot just share any information, or we cannot just share any knowledge loosely or freely. Certain knowledge are meant to be protected if they meet certain requirements, certain laws and regulations laid out for inventive step or for creation of artistic and literary works. So these are some of the paradoxes of innovation and trade that exist in the knowledge economy. Generally, we must be in the position to share knowledge. However, intellectual property rights protect certain knowledge and give exclusive rights to inventors and innovators. So that is the paradox. But loosely speaking, trade in knowledge focuses on technological knowledge, inventions, know-how. So this is what we speak to when we talk about trade in knowledge. The focus is on technological knowledge, is on inventions and know-how, but also creative content, artistic and literary works. Trade in knowledge highlights these specific categories of innovations that meet the requirement of protection for intellectual property. So we're talking about technological knowledge, inventions, know-how, creative content, artistic and literary works. The kind of content that intellectual property system recognizes and protects. These are contents we are referring to. So moving forward, the relationship between trade and intellectual property. The relationship between trade and intellectual property is a very complex interrelationship, or a relationship that we are still experimenting with, a relationship that is ongoing, that is still being experimented. A very complex relationship for that matter. the WTO doesn't have a formal definition of trade, unlike the World Intellectual Property Organization, the WIPO, that has a treaty that seeks to define intellectual property. So the WTO is different from the WIPO because it doesn't have a formal definition of trade. However, the WIPO seeks to give a perimeter or definition of what intellectual property is. So that's the distinction. And that is somehow fascinating because the WTO doesn't have a formal definition of trade, it then leaves open the possibility of rethinking what trade is and how to recognize and work with the knowledge component of trade. So there's no specific definition, and then this also leaves room for the possibility for rethinking what trade is and how to recognize the knowledge component of trade. So trade has undeniably and radically been transformed over the last 25 to 30 years. In the WTO, there exists what I may refer to as a famous agreement on trade and trade-related aspect of intellectual property rights, the TRIPS agreement. So this agreement emerged in the mid-1980s more or less as a device or diplomatic mechanism to get intellectual property quite literally on the agenda of trade negotiations. Intellectual property rights were absent back then from the negotiations taking place in international trade regulations, and the issues about IP rights was not really captured until the mid-80s when the trade-related aspect of intellectual property rights emerged. But it was not without any issues as well, because there were no common understanding as to what were those aspects of intellectual property rights, and this resulted to negotiations that eventually led to the promulgation of the TRIPS agreement, the trade-related aspect of intellectual property rights. So the first 2 or 3 years of negotiating and debating issues pertaining to the TRIPS agreement were to make a determination on what aspects of trade or intellectual property rights needed to be protected under the TRIPS agreement. And this was later in the 1980s and the early 1990s. And basically back then there was trade in goods and trade in tangible goods for that matter. So the sale of vehicles, the sale of radios, and just hard and tangible goods placed in containers and transported across borders, and particularly the transportation of goods across border. So goods back then in the late 90s, the late 80s and early 90s, trade was basically done in tangible goods and being placed in containers and basically crossed upon borders. And you have people there with clay bowls to count the amount and the number of goods that were being exported and imported from one border or from one country to another. And that certainly made sense at that period of time, the 80s and the 90s. But considering the current day dispensation of our world, the modern world we live in, where we have the invention of the World Wide Web by Tim Berners-Lee. Tim Berners-Lee have invented the World Wide Web that have significantly changed the way we do trade and changed our personal and way of life, our lifestyle as well. But during the negotiation and the debates that were being had concerning the promulgation of the TRIPS agreement, the internet and the World Wide Web were not taken into consideration during those debates. So the TRIPS agreement back then did not take into consideration the internet. So the diffusion of the internet was not given consideration. The sharing and trading of knowledge and the creation of content has totally, in our current day dispensation, transformed the way we work with intellectual property and the contents that intellectual property covers, and the way we treat with each other, maybe nation to nation or country to country. And so this has been the issue. This has been the challenge. So that has totally transformed the internet, and the World Wide Web has totally transformed the way we do trade, what content intellectual property covers, and how that content is treated. We're talking about marketing, digital marketing, trading through the internet, globally, online stores, and everything that the internet facilitates in terms of the digital economy. So let's look at the trade-related aspect of intellectual property rights. This agreement, how it came to be, and how it emerged. So the TRIPS agreement, the trade-related aspect of intellectual property rights agreement, was agreed upon in 1991 as a text and came into force in 1994. But back then, all members of the World Trade Organization were not technically obliged to enforce the TRIPS agreement within their countries until 1996. All members of the World Trade Organization were then under obligation to collectively enforce the TRIPS agreement. So the next issue has to do with regulating knowledge. The need to share, regulating knowledge. How do we regulate knowledge in terms of trade, or in terms of trade in knowledge and the trade economy? So there are more than two paradoxes, but I would like to briefly focus on the first paradox, and in subsequent episode we will highlight the preceding paradoxes. So the first paradox when it comes to regulating knowledge and regulating the needs to share knowledge. So basically is the first paradox has to do with a policy paradox. And basically in trade negotiations, the mindset is a zero-sum game. So the TRIPS agreement is a concession. The TRIPS agreement is a trade-off that developed countries will agree to provide or they will agree provided they get benefits from somewhere else. So trade negotiation is undertaken with the mindset that it is a zero-sum game, that all those engaged in negotiations of whatsoever agreement has the mindset that all parties will benefit and will make a contribution of that benefit. So it's a zero-sum game. So in a similar vein, the TRIPS agreement was a concession among member states of the World Trade Organization. It was a trade-off, particularly for developed countries that back then agreed to the agreement, provided that they could benefit from somewhere else. If they were not benefiting from obligating themselves to the TRIPS agreement in terms of intellectual property, but they could benefit in other means of market access. They could benefit from other WTO agreements in that regard. So developing and developed countries agree to the trade agreement and fix their signatures to the TRIPS agreement with the view that they were going to accrue that benefit from other areas like market access, and other areas. So the agreement was seen as a zero sum in terms of the TRIPS agreement. So, for example, Liberia wants market access from the Uruguay. They will have to pay for it. So Uruguay is not going to give Liberia free market access. Liberia will have to pay for accessing market access from Uruguay. So the calculus is zero sum, meaning that everything Uruguay as a country gives to Liberia will be paid for by Liberia. And that is the conventional approach to driving, to the driving instincts that pushes trade negotiations, because country holds the view member states engage in trade negotiations for whatsoever agreement that is being debated, hold the view that is a zero-sum game, that whatsoever contribution or obligation are undertaken as a member state of the World Trade Organization, I am going to receive in return benefits not directly from this identical document, but from other areas that I can benefit from. So this is how agreements are debated and negotiated at the World Trade Organization. So this will bring to close the first discussion with regards to trade in knowledge and the knowledge economy. We'll have a second episode, and we will dive deeper into the trade in knowledge and the knowledge economy and what it entails in the context of trade and intellectual property. So thank you guys for having me. Thank you for your support. I hope you share, comment, and you have any concerns or questions, I ask you to make it available. Oh, sorry, Zé, Zizi wa quickly, you say your voice is repeating. Your voice is repeating and we are getting a lot of feedback. Sorry, Zizi, I'll work on the audio issue. I'll work on the audio issue. I'm going to certainly do that. So thank you for following. We'll have the next episode on the trade in knowledge and knowledge economy shortly. Maybe over the weekend. These are all the issues that we really need support for to get the mark. With our audio problem, we need to purchase new equipment. We need to improve the quality of the content, invest more time, and the output of the general podcast. So we are asking you to subscribe to our channel. Continue to like, share, comment on our videos. Yeah, hearing the feedback. So I'm going to pin that comment. As there, I'm going to work on the audio. We are going to work on the audio. Let's see. Thank you for your support. Thank you for following. Address that. So this is the first episode for the trade in knowledge and the knowledge economy. We have a second episode and hopefully hopefully a third episode to further expand on it. But this is just a brief introduction of what trade in knowledge is about and what the knowledge economy is. So thank you for following. See you soon. Thank you for following. See you soon. See you soon. See you shortly. Bye, guys. Bye. Bye, guys. Bye. Share. Lucy. Yeah, my t-shirt look nice. It's great. So bye, guys. Bye. We'll see you in the meeting.